Hey there, tired listener. They say power corrupts. That's true. But in the 13th century, power also came with a complementary case of chronic indigestion, terrible fashion choices, and the constant nagging suspicion that everyone you know is either trying to borrow money or gently nudge you towards an early grave. And sometimes, yes, it gave you diarrhea. Tonight, we're not just visiting the past. We're going to be the source of the problem. We're stepping into the slightly too tight leather shoes of a medieval king who was famously bad at, well, pretty much everything. This isn't a story of glorious battles and chivalry. This is a story of political awkwardness, bad smells, and the kind of decision-making that makes you wonder how humanity managed to survive at all. It's the story of how one man's epic incompetence accidentally laid the groundwork for centuries of political chaos. A true pioneer. So go ahead, turn off the lights. Let your head sink into that ridiculously comfortable pillow of yours. A pillow that isn't stuffed with straw-dried moss and the lingering ghosts of a dozen medieval insects. Let your body grow heavy. Let the worries of your modern world, the emails, the deadlines, the existential dread of your social media feed, just dissolve. They have nothing on the sheer, mundane misery of trying to rule a kingdom without plumbing. And before you drift off into a slumber, hopefully not plagued by feudal tax codes, if this particular brand of historical misery helps you unwind, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like, and ring that little notification bell so you don't miss our next collective groan at the past. And do me a favor, drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from and what time your brain decided to call it quits for the night. It's always nice to know I'm not the only one staring into the void. Now get comfortable, really comfortable. Let's begin. The first thing you notice isn't the light. There isn't any. The first thing you notice is the cold. It's a damp, penetrating cold that seems to radiate from the very stones of the castle walls around you. It seeps through the heavy tapestries, which depict a rather uninspired hunting scene, and it settles deep in your bones. You are the king, but the cold is a far more absolute ruler in this chamber. You shift under a mountain of furs and wool blankets, each one coarse and smelling faintly of damp animal, wood smoke, and you. There is no gentle alarm clock, no soft melody to ease you into the day. Your alarm is the simple, brutal fact of being cold, and the pressing need to relieve your royal bladder. You drag yourself from the monstrous bed, your feet hitting the stone floor with a dull thud that echoes slightly in the gloom. The floor is gritty with dust and whatever else was tracked in yesterday. A servant is supposed to have scattered fresh rushes, but these feel old. They crunch under your bare feet and you can feel the occasional sharp stem. You are King John of England, and this is the height of luxury. The air itself is thick, a cocktail of stale breath, the smoky residue from last night's tallow candles, which smelled vaguely of boiled fat, and the ever-present, insidious scent of mildew. You can almost taste the dampness, a mineral tang on the back of your tongue. A servant, a pale boy named William, who always looks terrified, shuffles in with a single candle. The small flame does little to fight the oppressive darkness, mostly serving to make the shadows dance and deepen. He carries a small ceramic pitcher of water. It's frigid. You splash a handful onto your face, the shock of it doing more to wake you than a modern double espresso. There is no soap. Soap is a rare and bizarre luxury. Your skincare routine is a splash of icy water and a brisk rub with a piece of linen that feels suspiciously like a dish rag. You can feel the grease and grime of yesterday still clinging to your skin, a thin film of royal responsibility and sweat. You fumbled for your clothes, laid out by the same nervous boy. The first layer is a linen shirt or chemise. It's not soft. It's a rough, starchy garment that has been washed in lye so many times it has the texture of fine grit sandpaper. It's also perpetually damp. Nothing in this castle is ever truly dry. Pulling it on, you feel the familiar scratch against your skin, a minor but constant irritation you'll carry with you for the rest of the day. It's your royal undershirt, and it feels like a punishment. You wonder briefly if being a peasant is any worse. They probably get more sun. Next come the brays, your version of underwear. They are essentially baggy linen trousers tied with a drawstring. They offer no support, bunch up in all the wrong places, and serve as a constant reminder that comfort is a concept yet to be invented. Over this you pull on your tunic, a heavy wool garment dyed a respectable if unexciting shade of brown. The wool is thick, oily with lanolin, which offers some protection from the damp, but also carries the distinct aroma of a wet sheep. You are the most powerful man in the land, and you smell like a barn animal. This is just a fact of life. The servant hovers nearby, his eyes cast down, waiting to assist with the more complicated parts of your attire. He helps you with your hose, long woolen stockings that extend up your legs. They are held up by tying them to the drawstring of your brays, a system that seems designed to fail at the most inopportune moments. One wrong move, one too quick turn to glower at a baron, and you risk a catastrophic wardrobe malfunction. The indignity of it all is almost too much to bear before you've even had a bite to eat. Finally, the shoes. They are simple leather turn shoes, soft-soled and shapeless. They offer no arch support and will be magnets for every pebble and uneven flagstone in the castle. As you slide your feet into them, you can feel the slightly sticky residue of mud from the day before. Cleaning them is a cursory affair, a quick wipe that removes the chunks but leaves the essence of the outdoors behind. You are dressed. You look more or less like a king. But you feel like a damp, itchy, poorly assembled collection of textiles. The last act of the morning ritual is the chamber pot. It sits in a small curtained-off corner of the room. Its presence has been a quiet, aromatic companion all night. A different servant, one whose job it is to handle the less glamorous aspects of royal life, will come to collect it later. He will carry it through the castle, down winding stone staircases, and empty it into the moat. The same moat from which fish are sometimes caught for the evening meal. You try not to think about this. It is a thought that can ruin an already bleak morning. You stand for a moment in the near darkness of your chamber, listening. The castle is stirring. You can hear the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the muffled shouts of guardsmen in the bailey, the hacking cough of someone in the corridor outside. These are the sounds of your kingdom waking up. Each sound is a reminder of a problem you will have to solve, a petition you will have to hear, a tax you will have to levy. The weight of the crown feels heavier than the damp wool on your shoulders. With a sigh that seems to stir the dust motes in the candlelight, you push aside the heavy tapestry that covers your doorway and step out into the corridor. It's even colder out here. The stone walls weep with condensation, and the air is thick with the smell of more wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and something vaguely sour that might be old beer. Your day has begun, and you already feel tired. You are the king. And you suspect deep down that you're not very good at it, a suspicion that will soon be confirmed by pretty much everyone. The Great Hall is a cavern of noise and smoke. Even this early, it's a hive of activity. The ceiling, high and vaulted, is lost in a permanent haze of grey smoke from the central fire pit. The fire is huge, a roaring beast that provides the hall's only meaningful heat. But since the concept of a chimney is still a novelty act, most of the smoke decides to stay and become part of the decor. Your eyes sting. You take a shallow breath, and the acrid taste of burning oak fills your lungs. This is the smell of home. It's a smell that clings to your hair, your clothes, and your very soul. You will reek of wood smoke until the day you die. You make your way to the high table, a long, heavy oak slab set on a raised platform at one end of the hall. This is where you and your most important, or at least most persistent nobles take your meals. Your footsteps echo on the stone floor, which is littered with rushes, discarded bones from last night's feast, and whatever else has fallen from the tables. A couple of dogs of indeterminate breed are enthusiastically chewing on something that might have once been a chicken leg. No one pays them any mind. They are the castle's sanitation department, and their work is never done. You take your seat in the largest, most ornate chair. It's carved with lions that look more like surprised cats, and it is brutally uncomfortable. The back is ramrod straight, forcing you into a posture of rigid authority that your aching back protests with a dull throb. Courtiers and lesser nobles, already gathered in the hall, bow or nod as you pass. You acknowledge them with a grunt. You are not a morning person. To be fair, the 13th century is not a morning century. It's a cold, dark, and generally unpleasant time to be awake, regardless of your social standing. A servant places a wooden trencher in front of you. A trencher is a thick slice of stale bread that serves as your plate. It's a wonderfully efficient system. You eat your meal off the bread, and then, if you're feeling generous, you can give the gravy-soaked bread to the poor or the dogs. If you're hungry, you just eat your plate. Today the bread is particularly hard. You tap it with your fingernail, and it makes a sound like knocking on a wooden door. It's less a plate and more a potential weapon. This is your manchette bread, the finest available, made from sifted wheat flour. You shudder to think what the common folk are eating. Probably something with the consistency of a brick. Your breakfast arrives. There are no brightly colored bowls of cereal, no fresh fruit, no steaming coffee. There is ale, a large pewter tankard of it. The ale is weak, watery, and served at room temperature, which, in this hall, is just a few degrees above freezing. But it's safer than the water, which is often drawn from sources of questionable purity. You take a long swallow. It's bitter and malty, the breakfast of champions who have a long day of questionable decisions ahead of them. It washes away the morning taste in your mouth, replacing it with the taste of lukewarm disappointment. The food itself is a slab of boiled bacon, glistening with a thick layer of white fat and a chunk of hard cheese. That's it. The bacon is incredibly salty, a result of the curing process needed to preserve meat in a world without refrigeration. You saw it from a knife you carry on your belt, a multi-purpose tool for eating, defending yourself, and cleaning your fingernails. The meat is tough and chewy, a workout for your jaw. The cheese is sharp and crumbly with a tangy flavor that verges on sour. This is a high-status meal. The fact that you have meat for breakfast at all is a symbol of your immense wealth and power. It's a shame it tastes like a salted shoe. You chew slowly, deliberately, surveying the hall. Your barons and knights are eating with a noisy gusto, slurping their ale, tearing at their bread, and conversing in loud voices that echo off the stone walls. The sound is a dull roar, punctuated by the clatter of knives and the barking of the ever-present dogs. The smell is a complex symphony of smoke, unwashed men, wet dogs, stale ale, and boiling meat. You are surrounded by your most powerful subjects, the men who command your armies and control your lands. And you don't trust a single one of them. You watch them from under heavy eyelids. There's Hubert de Burgh, your justiciar, a man whose ambition is matched only by his impressive beard. He's talking with William Marshall, the aging but still legendary knight. They look serious. Are they talking about the ongoing disaster in France, or are they talking about you, your recent tax hikes, your unfortunate habit of losing battles? Paranoia is a king's closest companion. It sits with you at every meal, a cold ghost whispering in your ear. You take another swig of ale, trying to drown it out. A page brings a bowl of pottage. It's a thick, greyish stew of boiled grains and whatever vegetables were available, which at this time of year means mostly onions and turnips. It's bland, lukewarm, and has the consistency of wallpaper paste. You eat a few spoonfuls out of a sense of duty. This is fuel, not pleasure. The concept of gastronomy as a hobby is centuries away. Food is a necessity, and for a king it's a public performance. You must be seen to eat, to be robust, to be in charge, even if all you want to do is go back to your cold, damp bed and pull the smelly furs over your head. Your meal is interrupted by a clerk, a thin man with an ink stain on his nose who approaches the high table with a scroll. He bows low, his knees cracking in the cold air, and waits for your permission to speak. Business has begun. There will be no quiet moment to digest your salty bacon. Your breakfast is over. Your day of political chaos is about to begin. You gesture for the man to speak, a wave of your greasy hand, and brace yourself for the first piece of bad news. Spoiler alert, it will not be the last. The clerk unrolls the parchment with a dry crackle that seems impossibly loud in the relative quiet of the high table. He begins to read in a droning, monotonous voice that you already find intensely irritating. The report is about tax revenues from the north, or more accurately, the lack thereof. Several prominent barons, whose names you know all too well, are late with their payments. The language is couched in deferential terms, delayed, awaiting final tallies, but the message is clear. They are refusing to pay. It's a challenge, a subtle but unmistakable act of defiance. A knot of anger and anxiety tightens in your stomach, a feeling far more unpleasant than the boiled bacon currently sitting there. You are sitting on your throne. Let's be clear about what a throne is. It's not a gilded, jewel-encrusted masterpiece from a fantasy movie. It's a large, drafty wooden chair in a large, drafty room known as the throne room. It's less comfortable than the chair you just sat in for breakfast. The room is designed to be imposing, with high stone walls and narrow windows that let in slivers of weak grey light. But mostly it's just cold. You can see your breath plume in front of your face as you exhale. The only source of heat is a small fireplace in the corner that seems to consume wood with incredible inefficiency, producing more smoke than warmth. Your advisors stand before you, a collection of men in heavy robes, their faces pinched with cold and concern. They are the gears of your government. They whisper amongst themselves, casting nervous glances in your direction as the clerk continues his litany of financial woes. You are supposed to be the absolute authority. Your word is law. But the reality is a constant, exhausting negotiation. You need your barons, you need their soldiers for your armies and their money for your treasury. And right now, you have neither. Your disastrous military campaigns in France have drained your funds and cost you valuable lands. You are a king who is known for losing. It's not a great brand. The clerk finishes and rolls up the scroll, the silence he leaves behind heavier than the noise that preceded it. All eyes are on you. They are waiting for a decision, for a royal decree, for a flash of brilliance that will solve this intractable problem. You stare into the middle distance, at a tapestry depicting one of your ancestors looking heroic and competent. It feels like a personal insult. What are your options? You could send soldiers to seize the baron's lands, but that would almost certainly lead to open rebellion, a civil war you can't afford. You could summon them to court, but they would likely refuse, a public humiliation you cannot bear. You lean back in your uncomfortable chair, the cold wood pressing into your spine. You need a new tax, a brilliant, clever tax that no one can refuse. You look at your Chancellor of the Exchequer, a man whose primary job is to find creative ways to extract money from people who don't have it. He avoids your gaze, instead choosing to intently study a loose thread on his sleeve. He knows what's coming. He knows you're going to propose something desperate and ill-advised. It's become a pattern. Your reign has been a series of financial schemes, each more unpopular than the last. You've taxed inheritances, you've taxed widows, you've taxed knightly service. You've run out of things to tax. This is the daily grind of power. It isn't grand pronouncements and shining armor. It's this. It's sitting in a cold room, listening to bad news, and trying to figure out how to pay for your last mistake while simultaneously funding your next one. It's the crushing, mind-numbing boredom of administration. It's the endless scrolls, the wax seals, the dry, scratchy sound of a quill on parchment. It's a world without spreadsheets, without email, without any of the tools of modern bureaucracy. Every calculation is done by hand. Every message is carried by a man on a horse. Everything is slow, inefficient, and prone to error. You feel a headache coming on, a dull throb behind your eyes. It's probably the smoke, or the stress, or the weak ale you had for breakfast. You try to focus. A new tax. What about a tax on beards? No, that's stupid. A tax on leaving the country? That might work. Keep the disgruntled barons from running off to conspire with your enemies in France. You mention the idea out loud. A wave of palpable discomfort ripples through your advisors. You can see them mentally calculating the backlash, the logistical nightmare of enforcing such a thing. One of them, a brave or foolish bishop, clears his throat. "Your Majesty," he begins, his voice soft, "perhaps a more traditional approach would be prudent at this juncture. He's telling you your idea is insane. He's doing it in the most polite way possible, but the meaning is unmistakable. The frustration is immense. You are the king. Why can't they just do what you say? Why does everything have to be so complicated? The weight of it all presses down on you. The cold, the disapproval, the ever-present threat of failure. You feel a familiar urge to simply shout at all of them, to throw something, to retreat to your chambers and brood. But you can't. You have to sit here, on this cold, hard chair, and project an aura of command. You have to pretend you have a plan. You wave a dismissive hand at the bishop. "We will consider it," you mutter, a phrase that means no. You turn your attention to the next item of business, a dispute between two monasteries over sheep grazing rights. The details are excruciatingly tedious. As the petitioner drones on, your mind wanders. You think about your brother, Richard, the great hero, the Lionheart. Everyone loved him. He was good at the things a king was supposed to be good at: fighting, leading, looking magnificent on a horse. He was also almost never here, choosing to fight in foreign lands while you were stuck dealing with sheep disputes. You are living in his shadow, and it is a long, cold one. The pressure to live up to his legacy is immense, and your every failure is magnified in comparison. The barons whisper it, the common folk mutter it. You are not your brother. The thought is a bitter pill, one you have to swallow every single day. You grip the carved arms of your throne, your knuckles turning white. The petitioner is still talking about his sheep. You feel a sudden, intense wave of boredom, so profound it's almost a physical sensation. This is your life. Not a grand adventure, but an endless series of cold rooms and boring problems, and you haven't even made your big mistake yet. That, however, is coming soon. The tedious morning of administrative duties finally crawls to a close, signaled not by a clock, but by the growing cavernous ache in your royal stomach. You adjourn the court session with a mumbled decree about the sheep, a decision that satisfies no one but is definitive enough to make them go away. You proceed back to the Great Hall for dinner, which in this era is the main meal of the day, served around noon. The hall is transformed. If it was a smoky cavern of noise at breakfast, it is now a full-blown chaotic vortex of humanity. The smoke is thicker, The noise is a deafening roar, and the smell has acquired several new, complex layers of sweat, roasted meat, and spilled ale. Your place at the high table awaits. Servants have laid out the settings, such as they are. Another trencher of stale bread, perhaps slightly larger this time. A knife, a spoon for the soupy dishes, but no fork. Forks are a bizarre, effeminate Italian novelty that won't be troubling England for a few more centuries. Your dining companions are your hands. Next to your trencher sits a shared silver goblet, which you will be expected to share with the person next to you, and a communal salt cellar, a boat-shaped container of precious salt that is the ultimate status symbol on the table. Taking too much salt is a social faux pas of the highest order, a silent declaration of greed. Everything is a test. The food begins to arrive in a grand, theatrical procession. This is dinner as a power play. Squires and servants march from the kitchens carrying massive platters. There's a whole roasted pig with an apple in its mouth, its skin crackling and dark. There's a peacock, skinned before roasting, and then sewn back into its own feathered skin to be served looking unnervingly alive. It's a spectacular sight, but you know from experience that peacock meat is tough, dry, and tastes faintly of regret. There are pies filled with... well, it's best not to ask. The contents are usually a mystery of chopped meats, preserved fruits, and heavy, bewildering spices like ginger, cloves, and mace, all thrown together in a culinary Hail Mary. You tear a chunk of meat from the pig with your knife and your fingers. Grease runs down your chin and onto your tunic. This is not considered poor manners, it's just how one eats. You wipe your greasy hands on a napkin, or more likely, on one of the dogs that are now patiently sitting under the table, their warm, furry bodies pressed against your legs. They are the true beneficiaries of any feast, catching the falling scraps and bones that rain down from the tables. You dunk your bread into a shared bowl of a thick brownish gravy, trying not to think about how many other unwashed hands have been in there before you. The taste is overwhelmingly salty and spiced, a blunt instrument to hammer the palate into submission. As you chew on a piece of gristle, one of your barons, a large man named Fitzwalter, leans in close. His breath smells of ale and onions. He begins a long, rambling story that is clearly a prelude to asking for a favor. A land grant, a reduction in his scutage tax. You try to listen, to nod in the right places, to look engaged and kingly. But your attention is divided. You're trying to discreetly use your tongue to dislodge a stubborn piece of pig from between two of your molars. The mundane, physical reality of your body constantly undermines the majestic performance of kingship. Here is a powerful lord, and all you can think about is the deeply unsatisfying state of your own dental hygiene. You take a long drink from the shared goblet. It's a rough red wine from Gascony, one of your remaining French territories. It's acidic and thin, but it cuts through the grease. You pass the goblet to the bishop on your other side, who takes it with a solemn nod and wipes the rim with his sleeve before drinking. It's a gesture of politeness that does absolutely nothing to stop the spread of germs, a concept that is as alien as a fork. The entire meal is a delicate dance of protocol and shared saliva, a microcosm of the feudal system itself, interdependent, messy, and likely to give you a disease. The background noise is provided by a minstrel in a brightly colored tunic, standing near the fire pit and strumming a lute. He's singing a chanson de geste, an epic poem about some long-dead hero's valiant deeds. The ballad has at least 74 verses. You've heard it before. It's unbearably long. The minstrel's voice is reedy and often flat, but he sings with an earnest passion that makes it impossible to tell him to stop. So you sit, and you listen, and you chew, the heroic couplets blending into the general din of the hall, a soundtrack to your indigestion. Suddenly a commotion at the far end of the hall cuts through the noise. The guards part to allow a man to stumble through. He is caked in mud from head to toe, his face pale with exhaustion. A royal messenger, he has clearly ridden hard for days. The hall falls into a tense silence. The minstrel trails off mid-verse. All eyes turn to the messenger, and then to you. This is how all truly bad news arrives, publicly and in the middle of a meal. The man falls to one knee before the high table, gasping for breath, clutching a sealed scroll. He delivers his message without ceremony, his voice cracking with fatigue. Your Majesty, Chateau Gaillard has fallen. King Philip's flag flies over the fortress. A collective gasp ripples through the hall. Chateau Gaillard, your family's masterpiece of a castle in Normandy, the key to the entire duchy. It was said to be impregnable, and you have just lost it. The silence is now deafening, thick with judgment. You can feel the weight of hundreds of pairs of eyes on you, watching your reaction, measuring your worth. You stare at the messenger, then at the half-eaten pig on the table. The festive meal has turned to ash in your mouth. You want to scream, to rage, to overturn the table. But you can't. You are the king. You must be composed. You slowly place your greasy knife down on the trencher. You look out over the sea of silent, staring faces. Your barons, your knights, your court. You see shock, you see fear, and in the eyes of some, like Fitzwalter, you see something else. The faintest glimmer of contempt. Your appetite is gone. Another failure. Another humiliation. And this one is a catastrophe. In the wake of catastrophic news, a king cannot be seen to despair. To show weakness is to invite challenges. So, you do what any cornered, insecure monarch would do. You call for a hunt. It is the ultimate performance of nobility. It's a way to project an image of power, of leisure, of being in command of both your lands and your emotions, even when you feel like the world is crumbling under your feet. You don't actually want to go. You'd rather go back to your chamber and throw heavy objects at the wall, but the court is watching. So you force a grim smile and announce that the royal falcons will fly this afternoon. Preparing for the hunt is an ordeal in itself. It is not a matter of throwing on a comfortable jacket. A servant helps you into your riding clothes. This involves layers of wool and thick, stiff leather that constricts your movement. A heavy cloak is draped over your shoulders, essential for the biting wind but cumbersome and heavy. The boots are tall leather monstrosities, clumsy to walk in and designed solely for being on a horse. The whole ensemble weighs you down, a physical representation of the duties you're being forced to perform. It all smells faintly of horse leather and the dried sweat of your last joyless outing. The castle courtyard is a whirlwind of organized chaos. Grooms shout as they lead horses from the stables, their hooves clattering on the cobblestones. The kennel master struggles to control a pack of hounds, their barks and howls echoing off the stone walls. And in the center of it all is the royal falconer, a man of immense importance, holding his prized birds on a gloved fist. The air is a potent mix of horse manure, wet dog, and the sharp, musky scent of the falcons. It's the smell of aristocratic leisure, and it's overwhelming. Your horse, a powerful destrier bred for war, is brought before you. It is a magnificent animal, but it is also a living, breathing creature with a will of its own, and it seems to sense your foul mood. It shifts its weight nervously, its eyes wide. A groom holds the stirrup as you heave yourself into the saddle. The saddle is not built for comfort. It's a rigid frame of wood and leather, designed to keep you secure in a battle, not for a pleasant ride in the country. You know that after a few hours, every bone in your backside will be screaming in protest. It is a throne of pain. The falconer approaches with your personal gerfalcon, the most prized of all hunting birds. It sits perched on his thick leather gauntlet, a hood covering its eyes to keep it calm. It is a beautiful creature, all sleek feathers and controlled power. But as you look at it, you feel no thrill, no connection to the ancient sport of kings. You see a wild animal, trapped and trained to perform for the amusement of men. It is a tool, a status symbol, and in this moment you feel a certain kinship with its hooded, constrained existence. You and your retinue ride out from the castle gates, a grand procession of nobles, servants, and animals. The ride is not smooth. The road is little more than a muddy track, and the horse's gait is a jarring trot that shakes your teeth. The wind whips across the open fields, cold and relentless, cutting through your heavy cloak. The English countryside is not a gentle, rolling green paradise today. It is a palette of browns and greys under a sky the colour of dishwater. This is not an escape. It is simply a change of scenery for your misery. After what feels like an eternity of uncomfortable bouncing, you reach a suitable spot. The dogs are released, fanning out to flush prey from the undergrowth. The falconer removes the hood from your gerfalcon. The bird blinks in the sudden light, its sharp eyes taking in the world. A crane is spotted flying high above. This is the moment. With a practiced motion, the falconer releases the bird. It leaps from his glove, powerful wings beating the air, and begins to climb in a magnificent spiral. For a second, you feel a flicker of awe, but the flicker dies instantly. The gerfalcon, your symbol of royal power and precision, ignores the distant crane entirely. Instead, it spots a fat, slow-moving pheasant pecking at the ground not 50 yards away. The bird banks sharply, dives, and in a flurry of feathers, dispatches the entirely unimpressive pheasant. It was not a hunt. It was an execution of a creature with the survival instincts of a rock. An awkward silence falls over your hunting party. This was meant to be a display of majestic skill, and instead, it was a display of lazy, opportunistic gluttony. Your barons and knights have the good sense to stare intently at the horizon, pretending they saw nothing. But you catch a glimpse of two young squires failing to suppress their laughter before a knight shoots them a death glare. The falconer looks as if he wants to be swallowed by the earth. Your multi-thousand-acre estate and your prized bird chooses the easiest possible target. It is a small thing, a ridiculous mishap, but in your fragile state, it feels like a cosmic joke at your expense. It's a perfect, pathetic metaphor for your reign, grand ambitions that end in clumsy, embarrassing failure. The ride back to the castle is a grim affair. No one speaks. The only sounds are the clip-clop of hooves, the jingle of harnesses, and the ceaseless, mocking wind. The saddle seems to have grown harder, the cold more penetrating. You had left the castle to project strength and escape the shame of your defeat in Normandy. You return feeling smaller, colder, and more foolish than ever. The so-called royal pastime has been nothing but another form of torture, another public reminder of the vast gulf between the king you are supposed to be and the man you actually are. As dusk bleeds across the sky, painting the narrow castle windows in shades of bruised purple, you retreat to your solar. This is your private chamber, a room away from the public chaos of the great hall and the ceremonial emptiness of the throne room. It is not a cozy office. It is a small stone-walled room, furnished with a heavy wooden chest, a single brazier of glowing coals that fights a losing battle against the cold, and a large flat-topped table that serves as your desk. The air is still and thick with the scent of old parchment, melting beeswax, and the ever-present wood smoke. This is where the real tedious work of being a king happens. The day's failures, the lost castle, the embarrassing hunt, recede into a dull throb of anxiety. Before you is a mountain of paperwork, the tangible form of your kingdom's endless problems. Your chancellor and a handful of clerks are with you, their faces drawn and tired in the flickering candlelight. They lay out the scrolls and parchments on the table, land disputes to be settled, charters to be granted, judicial appeals to be heard, letters to be answered. It is a river of grievances, requests and reports, and you are the dam that must process it all. You pick up the first document. It's a petition from the merchants of York, complaining about a new toll a local lord has imposed on a bridge. The parchment is stiff and dry, made from the treated skin of a sheep. You can still faintly smell the animal it came from. The script is a dense thicket of black ink, the letters crammed together, written by a professional scribe whose handwriting is precise but exhausting to read. You don't read it yourself, of course. A clerk, his voice a droning monotone, reads the whole thing aloud, his words swallowed by the quiet of the room. The process is excruciatingly slow. Every petition has a history. Every decision has consequences. Granting the merchant's request will anger the Lord, who is a powerful man with many knights. Denying it will hurt the city's commerce, which means less tax revenue for you. You are caught in a web of competing interests, and every tug on one strand makes another vibrate. You listen to your advisors, who offer conflicting counsel based on their own allegiances and ambitions. The discussion drags on, a slow, circular argument in the dying light. Finally, you make a decision. You will grant the merchant's petition. You need the support of the towns and their growing wealth more than you need the loyalty of one more disgruntled nobleman. You have enough of those already. You give the order, and a clerk begins to draft the royal charter, his quill scratching rhythmically against a fresh sheet of parchment. The sound is the heartbeat of your administration, a dry, persistent scratching that will haunt your sleep. Now comes the most important part of the process, the affixing of the Great Seal. This is how your will becomes law. A clerk brings the wax, a block of deep red beeswax mixed with resin. He holds it over the flame of a candle until it softens and drips, forming a thick molten puddle at the bottom of the newly written charter. The warm, sweet, slightly smoky smell of the melting wax fills the solar. It is the scent of power, the aroma of finality. You are handed the Great Seal of England. It is not a ring, but a heavy, two-sided metal matrix, an intricate device of silver or gold-plated bronze. It is attached to a large press. You place the charter on the base of the press, and with a grunt of effort you pull the heavy lever down. The matrix clamps onto the puddle of warm wax, imprinting it on both sides with your royal image and titles. You hold it for a moment, the pressure making the wax spread into a perfect official disc. The act is physical, tangible. For a brief moment, pressing your authority into the cooling wax, you feel a sense of control, but the feeling is fleeting. As soon as one charter is sealed, another is placed before you, and then another. A grant of land to a monastery, a pardon for a minor noble convicted of poaching, a letter to the Pope, full of deferential language and carefully concealed requests. The pile of documents seems endless. Your arm aches from working the heavy seal press. Your eyes burn from squinting at text in the dim, wavering candlelight. The initial sense of power dissolves into the familiar feeling of drudgery. This is not ruling, this is clerical work. Then a clerk unrolls a new scroll. It's a report from a spy you have in the court of a baron in Normandy, one you have long suspected of disloyalty. The light is poor, and your mind is weary from the day's events. The report is full of rumor and insinuation, stating that the baron has been seen speaking with agents of King Philip. It offers no concrete proof, only whispers and suspicions. Normally, you might proceed with caution, seek more information, but you are not in a cautious mood. You are angry about Chateau Gaillard. You are smarting from the humiliation of the hunt. Your patience is gone. In a voice sharp with frustration, you begin to dictate a letter. You don't summon the baron to court for questioning. You don't send a warning. You condemn him outright. You declare him a traitor, strip him of his titles and lands, and order the immediate arrest of him and his family. Your clerks look at each other, their faces betraying a flicker of alarm at the severity and swiftness of your decree. But no one dares to question you. The order is written. The wax is melted. With a final furious motion, you slam the press down, sealing the document. A messenger is summoned to ride through the night. You have just made a powerful man your sworn enemy, based on nothing but a tired mind and a bad mood. You have lit a fuse, and you have no idea how short it is. You finally dismiss the last of your clerks, your voice a hoarse whisper. The solar, with its flickering candles and mountains of parchment, feels like a tomb. You retreat to your bedchamber, the one place in this entire castle that is supposed to be a sanctuary, but there is no peace to be found here. The room is as cold and damp as you left it, and the single candle a servant has lit does little more than emphasize the oppressive gloom. The furs on your bed look less like a comfort and more like a wild beast that has died in its sleep. The silence that greets you is not peaceful. It is heavy, filled with the echoes of your own bad decisions. A servant helps you undress. There is no privacy, not even in your exhaustion. He pulls off your heavy leather boots, your woolen tunic, your scratchy hose. You are left in your linen chemise, the same one you've been wearing all day. Here it's clammy with sweat and smells of wood smoke, horse, and anxiety. This will also be your nightgown. The concept of dedicated sleepwear is a luxury for a future you will never see. You dismiss the boy with a wave, and finally, you are alone. You climb into the monstrous bed, the ropes that support the mattress creaking in protest under your weight. The bed is a landscape of discomfort. The mattress is a thick sack filled with straw. It's lumpy. You can feel every bump and hollow through the thin linen sheet. Over the months, the straw has been compressed into dense, unforgiving clumps, and you can feel a particularly large one digging into your lower back. You shift, trying to find a position that doesn't involve a piece of dried grass stabbing you in the ribs. The pillow is no better, a smaller sack filled with what feels like a mixture of feathers and small rocks. It offers your head a choice between being propped up at an unnatural angle or sinking into a lumpy abyss. You lie there, staring up into the oppressive darkness above you. Sleep does not come. Your mind, free from the distractions of the day, decides now is the perfect time to replay every single one of your failures in excruciating detail. You see the flag of King Philip of France unfurling over the walls of Chateau Gaillard. You hear the stifled laughter of the squires at your pathetic hunt. You feel the heavy thud of the Great Seal as you condemned a man to ruin, a man who is, at this very moment, probably gathering his allies against you. Each memory is a fresh turn of the screw. The castle is not silent. You had wished for quiet, but now you are aware of every tiny sound. The wind whistles a mournful, reedy tune through an unseen crack in the stone wall. From somewhere deep within the walls, you hear the faint, frantic scratching of a rat. A dog barks once in the courtyard below, a sharp, lonely sound. You hear the distant, measured tread of a sentry walking his post on the battlements, the crunch of his boots on the stone, a steady, repetitive reminder that the world continues, that dangers are always being watched for, including the ones you've just created yourself. You turn onto your side, pulling the coarse wool blanket up to your chin. It offers warmth, but it's an itchy, suffocating weight. You feel a prickle on your leg. Is it a stray piece of straw, or is it a flea? You can't be sure. The possibility of sharing your royal bed with a host of tiny, unseen guests is not a question of if, but how many. You try to ignore the sensation, to force your mind into a state of blankness. You count sheep, but the sheep just remind you of the boring legal dispute from this morning. You try to think of nothing, But nothingness is a void your anxieties rush to fill. The minutes stretch into an hour, then two. The tallow candle sputters in its dish, the smell of burnt fat a constant nauseating companion. Your body is exhausted, aching from the horse ride and the sheer tension of the day, but your mind is a rebellious court, a parliament of worries, each one demanding to be heard. You are the King of England, Lord of Ireland, Duke of Normandy and Aquitaine. You are a sovereign ruler appointed by God. But in the cold, dark misery of your own bed, you cannot even command a moment's peace. The irony is crushing. Peasants are sleeping soundly in their hovels, exhausted from a day of honest labor. Your barons are asleep in their own cold castles, perhaps dreaming of your downfall. Even the rat in the wall has probably found its nest and drifted off. But you, the king, are awake. You are trapped in this state of weary vigilance, a prisoner in your own castle, a ruler of a vast kingdom of discomfort. And the worst part is the bone-deep certainty that tomorrow will be even worse. Just as you are drifting into a shallow, dreamless state that is not quite sleep but is the best you can hope for, a new sound cuts through the night. The heavy wooden door to your chamber groans open. Its iron hinges, perpetually in need of grease, emit a long, mournful shriek like a soul in torment. You tense up, your hand instinctively reaching for the dagger you keep by your bed. Is it an assassin? A courier with more disastrous news? The candlelight flickers and a figure steps into the room, wrapped in a heavy cloak. It is not a threat. It is your wife. Queen Isabella stands silhouetted against the dim light of the corridor. She is much younger than you. A teenager you married for purely political reasons, a move that nullified her previous engagement and infuriated a powerful French noble family, adding yet another name to your long list of enemies. She is said to be the great beauty of her age, but in the wavering, greasy light of the single candle, she just looks tired and cold. She closes the door behind her, plunging the room back into near-total darkness, and you can hear the soft rustle of her silk night-robe as she moves toward the bed. She doesn't speak, not at first. There is no term of endearment, no gentle inquiry about your day. Her presence is a duty, an expectation. This is the transactional nature of a royal marriage. Her purpose is to provide you with a legitimate heir, to secure the dynasty. Your purpose is to facilitate that. The space between you on the lumpy straw mattress feels 1,000 miles wide. You can smell her perfume, a heavy, cloying scent of cloves and rosewater, a powerful fragrance designed to fight a losing war against the castle's ambient miasma. It's so strong, it makes your eyes water. She finally speaks, her voice a low murmur that is barely audible over the whistling wind. The Archbishop sent another letter. That is how she begins, not with comfort but with business. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Stephen Langton, is a man you despise, a man the Pope forced upon you, another symbol of your waning authority. You and he are locked in a bitter struggle over the rights of the Church in England. Her words are a casual, devastating reminder that even here, in the supposed privacy of your bed, politics are inescapable. What did he want, you ask, your voice flat. You don't really care. You just want her to be quiet so you can go back to your miserable attempt at sleeping. He complains about the funds you seized from the Diocese of Lincoln, she replies. Of course he does. You took the money because your treasury is empty, a fact you'd rather not be reminded of at this hour. You grunt in response, a sound of pure, kingly annoyance. This is your pillow talk. Church finances and episcopal complaints. It's about as romantic as a tax audit. She falls silent again. You can feel her there beside you, a separate island of warmth in the vast cold bed. Her duty is done. She has delivered her piece of information, a subtle display of her own access to the currents of power within the court. Now another duty is expected, the one for which she was brought here in the first place. The air is thick with unspoken obligation. There is no affection here, only the cold, grim necessity of procreation. You are two pieces in a dynastic game, moving together without warmth or connection. You think about your illegitimate children, the dozen or so you have scattered across the kingdom with various mothers. They are a testament to your vigor, perhaps, but they are of no use to the throne. You need a son, a legitimate heir from this politically advantageous, personally vacant marriage. The pressure is immense. Every month that passes without news of a pregnancy is a quiet failure, a point of gossip for the ladies of the court, and a point of concern for your advisers. Your wife's youth and beauty are not a source of joy for you. They are a constant, silent reproach. After a few more moments of heavy silence, she sighs. It's a small, almost inaudible sound, but it is filled with a weariness that matches your own. She is trapped in this life, just as you are. A beautiful pawn in a game played by old powerful men, married to a failing king in a cold, damp castle far from her home. You feel a sudden, unwelcome flicker of empathy for her. It's an uncomfortable emotion, one that complicates the simple political calculus of your marriage. It passes as quickly as it came, replaced by your own familiar, all-consuming misery. Eventually, without another word, she slips out of the bed, the rustle of her gown, the creak of the door, and she is gone. The chamber is yours again, but it feels different. Her visit has not brought comfort or connection. It has only served to deepen your sense of isolation. You are surrounded by people, advisors, servants, a wife, but you are utterly alone. The cold in the room seems to have intensified, and the weight of the crown, even when it's just a phantom pressure on your brow, feels heavier than ever before. Sleep, you realize, is a kingdom you will never conquer. The grey, watery light of dawn eventually filters through the arrow-slit window of your chamber, bringing with it no warmth, only the confirmation that the miserable night is over and a potentially more miserable day has begun. You have managed, perhaps, an hour or two of fragmented, unsatisfying sleep, and you feel worse than when you went to bed. Your body is a collection of aches, your head is a swamp of dull pain, and your mouth tastes like the bottom of a blacksmith's forge. William, the perpetually nervous servant, enters with the customary pitcher of icy water, his face even paler than usual. You're in the middle of pulling on your sandpaper-like chemise when the door to your chamber is thrown open without a knock. It's not a servant this time, it is Hubert de Burgh, your justiciar, his face a mask of grim urgency. Protocol is shattered. For your chief minister to burst into your private chambers while you are in a state of undress means the news is not just bad. It is a 5-alarm political fire. He doesn't even seem to notice the shivering, half-dressed state of his king. His eyes are wide, and he's holding a hastily rolled-up piece of parchment. "Your Majesty," he says, his voice low and strained, skipping all formalities. "A messenger from the north. He rode 3 horses to exhaustion to get here." Hubert's usual composure is gone, replaced by a raw, undisguised alarm that sends a jolt of pure ice through your veins. You knew this was coming. You felt it in your bones all night. But the reality of it is a physical blow. You sit heavily on the edge of your bed, the lumpy straw mattress groaning under your sudden weight. "What is it?" you ask, though you already know the answer. The Baron you condemned yesterday, Lord de Vesci, was not at his primary castle when your men arrived. He had been warned. By whom? A spy, a disloyal courtier in this very castle. The paranoia blooms instantly, a toxic flower in your mind. De Vesci had slipped away in the night. By the time your soldiers arrived to seize his lands and arrest his family, they were met by a raised drawbridge and a volley of arrows. Your impulsive, angry order had failed completely. The Baron was not in chains, he was free, and he was angry. Hubert unrolls the parchment. It's not from your men. It's a copy of a declaration that is now being circulated among the northern barons. It's from de Vesci himself. Hubert reads it aloud, his voice gaining strength as he recites the treasonous words. The Baron declares you a tyrant, a king who has broken the sacred feudal contract. He accuses you of ruling by whim rather than law, of illegal seizures of land, of imposing unjust taxes. He renounces his fealty to you, and he calls upon all true Englishmen to join him in defending their ancient liberties against a lawless king. You listen in stunned silence. Every word is a hammer blow. He has taken your personal rash act and turned it into a public cause. He has framed his personal grievance as a noble crusade for justice. It is a work of political genius, and it will be lethally effective. And the worst part? It is all more or less true. You have been arbitrary. You have been grasping. You have pushed your barons to the breaking point. You had hoped to crush one man and make an example of him. Instead, you have handed him a martyr's crown and a rebel's banner. The final piece of news is the dagger in the heart. Lord de Vesci is not alone. Hubert informs you that two other powerful northern families, the Fitzalans and the Montagues, have already joined him. They are related by marriage, a web of kinship and shared interest that you had foolishly disregarded. They have combined their forces and are now fortifying their castles, calling up their knights and levies. It is not a disgruntled lord. It is not a minor uprising. It is a rebellion, a full-blown civil war born from a moment of tired, petulant rage in your candle-lit solar. You stand up, your half-dressed state forgotten. You walk to the narrow window and stare out at the grey, indifferent sky. The cold stone of the castle wall leaches the last of the warmth from your fingertips. You can feel the eyes of Hubert de Burgh on your back, waiting for your response, waiting for a plan. But your mind is a howling void. The sheer, predictable, self-inflicted nature of this disaster is overwhelming. You were trying to solve a problem of defiance, and in one stroke of a wax seal you have multiplied it 100-fold. The political chaos you have feared is no longer a threat on the horizon. It has arrived, and you have no one to blame but yourself. Within the hour you are in the small council chamber, a room that feels even colder and more claustrophobic than usual. The same advisors who witnessed your angry decree last night are assembled again, their faces a mixture of fear, grim satisfaction, and thinly veiled, "I told you so." The air is thick with tension. There are no pleasantries. The time for deliberation is over. The time for panic has officially begun. You sit at the head of the heavy oak table, the wood cool and solid under your trembling hands. You try to project an aura of command, but you feel like a schoolboy who has just set fire to the schoolhouse. The debate, when it begins, is not a calm, strategic discussion. It is a chaotic eruption of fear and ambition. William Marshall, the old, battle-scarred regent, is the first to speak. His voice is a low rumble, like stones grinding together. He is a man of action. His counsel is simple, brutal, and predictable. "We must ride north now," he growls. "We must crush this before it spreads. Make an example of de Vesci that will be remembered for 1,000 years. Hang him from the walls of his own castle." The hawks in the room nod in agreement, their eyes gleaming with the prospect of battle and, more importantly, the confiscated lands of the defeated rebels. Then the Bishop of Winchester clears his throat, his voice a soft, cautious counterpoint to Marshall's gravelly declaration. "Your Majesty, our treasury is empty. The campaign in France has bled us dry. How do we propose to pay for another army?" He speaks of logistics, of supply lines, of the cost of grain for horses and salt beef for soldiers. He raises the spectre of raising new taxes on a populace that is already stretched to its limit. To levy another scutage now, it might drive more of the undecided barons into de Vesci's camp, perhaps diplomacy, sending an envoy. The doves murmur their assent, their faces etched with the worry of balancing the royal checkbook. The room descends into a cacophony of competing arguments. The barons bicker amongst themselves. One lord, whose lands border the rebels, is terrified and demands an immediate, massive royal army for his protection. Another, whose lands are far to the south, seems almost bored by the crisis and tries to steer the conversation back to a personal land dispute he has with a monastery. The conversation splinters into a dozen different arguments. It is a perfect reflection of your kingdom, a fractured, self-interested collection of powerful men, united only by a fragile and rapidly dissolving loyalty to you. You try to listen, to weigh the options, but your mind is a storm of paranoia. You look at William Marshall, the great warrior. Does he truly want to save your kingdom, or does he just crave one last glorious battle before he dies? You look at the bishop. Is his caution born of wisdom, or is he a coward, afraid of conflict? You look at the other barons. Which of them are secretly pleased by this rebellion? Which of them are already writing secret letters to de Vesci, hedging their bets, waiting to see which way the wind blows? You trust no one. Every piece of advice is tainted by suspected self-interest. The logistics are a nightmare. You don't have a standing army. To go to war, you must send out a feudal summons, a demand for your vassals to provide the knightly service they owe you. It's a slow, cumbersome process. It will take weeks, maybe months, to gather a meaningful force. Weeks in which the rebellion can grow, gain momentum, and attract more followers. And it will cost a fortune you do not have. You would have to pledge your royal jewels, borrow from foreign bankers at exorbitant rates, squeeze the merchants and the church for every last penny. War is a vast, hungry machine, and your coffers are full of dust. You are trapped. To do nothing is to appear weak, to invite the rebellion to spread like a fever. To act is to risk immediate bankruptcy and to force the undecided lords to choose a side, a choice many of them may not make in your favor. Both paths lead to potential ruin. Your rash decision has left you with no good options. The arguments rage around you, a meaningless noise. The weight of the decision falls on you, and you alone. You feel the cold sweat on your brow. Finally, you cannot bear the indecision, the cacophony, any longer. You need to appear kingly, you need to be decisive. You rise to your feet, your chair scraping harshly against the stone floor. The room falls silent, all eyes on you. You look from the hawkish face of Marshall to the worried face of the bishop. You don't make a decision based on strategy or wisdom. You make it based on emotion, on pride, on the burning need to erase the humiliation of your earlier failures. We will not negotiate with traitors, you announce, your voice louder and firmer than you feel. Summon the levies. We ride north. We will make them pay. A grim silence greets your words. The decision is made. You have just declared war on your own people. A war you cannot afford, a war you started. The room is still, but you can almost hear the gears of history beginning to grind, pulling your kingdom and your reign toward the abyss. The bravado of your declaration in the council chamber evaporates the moment you return to your solar. The fire you felt has cooled into the familiar, clammy dread of consequence. War is not just a decision. It is an avalanche of administration, and you are about to be buried under it. Your clerks are summoned, their faces pale and their hands trembling slightly as they lay out fresh stacks of parchment, sharpen quills, and open new pots of ink. The room which last night was the scene of your impulsive mistake is now the factory where that mistake will be mass-produced and distributed across your kingdom. The process is a masterpiece of tedious, repetitive labor. For every major baron and tenant-in-chief sworn to your service, a writ of summons must be drafted. You don't write them yourself, of course. You dictate the formulaic text to a senior clerk, who then recites it to the junior scribes, who then painstakingly copy it onto individual sheets of parchment. John, by the grace of God, King of England, to our faithful and beloved William d'Aubigny, we command you, on the faith by which you are bound to us, that you be with us at Nottingham with horses and arms, to defend our person and our crown against the perfidy of our enemies. Over and over again. The same words, the same threats, the same demands. You watch one of the scribes at his work. He is a young man with a permanent ink stain on his right middle finger. His head is bowed, his shoulders hunched. The only sound from him is the delicate, insistent scratch, scratch, scratch of his quill. Each letter is a work of art, a careful, controlled stroke. But it is slow, excruciatingly slow. He has to pause every few minutes to dip his quill in the ink pot, a small horn filled with a dark liquid made from oak galls, iron sulfate, and gum arabic. It has a sharp, metallic smell that catches in the back of your throat, the official perfume of bureaucracy. You watch him, and you multiply his slowness by the 100 or so writs that must be prepared. Your grand war will be launched at the speed of a man writing with a feather. Once a writ is finished, it must be checked for errors, blotted with fine sand to dry the ink, then rolled and tied with a ribbon. And then comes the seal. You sit once more before the heavy press, the blocks of red wax warming by the brazier. Each document is placed before you. The wax is dripped. The lever is pulled. The heavy thump of the great seal impressing your authority onto the wax becomes the rhythm of the evening. Thump. Another baron summoned. Thump. Another knight called away from his home. Thump. Another potential enemy who might just decide de Vesci's cause is more appealing than yours. With each press of the seal, you are casting a net and you have no idea if you will pull in fish or serpents. Then come the messengers. They are not the gleaming knights of song and story. They are tough, wiry men with weathered faces and the 1,000-yard stare of those who spend their lives on the road. They are summoned to the solar, and you watch as a clerk hands them their assigned writs and a pouch of coins for their expenses. You give them their instructions. Ride without stopping, kill a horse if you must, but deliver this. They nod, their faces impassive. They have heard it all before. They are the circulatory system of your kingdom, the arteries carrying your will to its distant limbs, and they are slow, vulnerable, and subject to the weather. As the night wears on, the solar grows colder. The candles burn low, casting long, dancing shadows on the stone walls. The pile of sealed writs grows, a small mountain of future conflict. Your arm aches from working the press. Your voice is raw from dictating orders. You are surrounded by the machinery of power, yet you have never felt more powerless. You have given the order, but now all you can do is wait. Wait for these men on horseback to traverse the muddy, bandit-infested roads of your kingdom. Wait for the barons to receive your command. Wait to see who answers the call and who sends back only silence. The last messenger is dispatched just before dawn. He disappears into the pre-dawn gloom, another lonely rider carrying a piece of your will into the world. You are left in the near-silent solar with your exhausted clerks. The room stinks of stale sweat, ink, and burnt-out candles. A fine layer of sand covers the great table. It is a scene of immense bureaucratic effort. You have mobilized the entire administrative power of your crown. And for what? To clean up a mess of your own making. You feel no sense of accomplishment, only a profound, soul-deep weariness. The sun is rising, but for you the darkness is just beginning. A week later, it becomes painfully clear that William Marshall's desire for war and your own royal decree have a fundamental disagreement with reality. An army, even a reluctant, hastily assembled one, runs on silver, and your treasury does not contain silver. It contains moths, a few forgotten promissory notes, and the lingering echo of wealth long since spent on your French disasters. So, you must do the one thing that strips a king of his majesty faster than anything else. You must ask for money. It is time to go begging, hat in hand, to the very subjects you are supposed to command. Your first stop is the City of London. You summon the wealthiest wool merchants and guild leaders to a meeting. You don't meet them in the throne room. That is for dispensing justice, not for groveling. You meet in a smaller, private hall, an attempt at intimacy that fools no one. They arrive in their finest robes, trimmed with fur that is richer than your own. They are not nobles. They do not owe you military service. They are businessmen. They smell not of horse and leather, but of foreign spices, of wealth, of a world of commerce that you barely understand. They bow, their faces polite, their eyes as hard and calculating as the coins in their purses. You make your speech. You speak of loyalty, of the defense of the realm, of the threat posed by traitors and rebels. You try to sound powerful, in control, as if you are offering them an opportunity to invest in a glorious victory. But the words taste like ash in your mouth. You are not offering. You are pleading. You are asking for a loan. A word everyone in the room understands is a synonym for a gift you will never see again. You finish, and the silence in the room is deafening. You are the king, and you have just asked your subjects for a handout. The humiliation is a physical heat that rises in your cheeks. The lead merchant, a man whose ships dominate the wool trade with Flanders, finally speaks. His voice is smooth, respectful, but unyielding. He talks of the poor harvest, of the dangers of piracy in the Channel, of the new tolls you yourself imposed last year that have squeezed their profits. He pledges their undying loyalty, of course, but their coffers, he claims with a perfectly straight face, are simply not as full as His Majesty might believe. In the end, they agree to a loan. But it is a fraction of what you asked for, and it comes with strings attached. A royal charter confirming their ancient privileges, a promise to reduce the tax on wool exports. You have to agree. You have no choice. You came for money, and you leave with less money than you need and several new promises you cannot afford to keep. You have sold a piece of your royal authority for a few bags of silver. Next, you turn to the church. You summon the Bishop of London, a man whose piety is matched only by his immense wealth. The church is a state within a state, with its own laws, its own courts, and vast tracts of land that are exempt from your taxes. The meeting takes place in a chapel, the air thick with the sweet, heavy scent of incense and beeswax candles. Stained glass windows cast jewels of colored light onto the stone floor. It is quiet, clean, and holy. It makes your own smoky, chaotic castle feel like a barbarian's hovel. The bishop listens to your request, his fingers steepled, his face a mask of serene contemplation. He does not speak of commerce, but of your soul. He reminds you of your ongoing bitter dispute with the Pope. He speaks of the rights of God and the sacred immunity of church property. He suggests that this rebellion might be a sign of divine displeasure with your reign. He is, in the most sanctimonious way possible, blackmailing you. He will give you the money, but only if you agree to restore the lands you seized from his cousin, the abbot of St. Albans, and to write a letter of apology to the archbishop. The cost of this loan is not just silver, but a public spiritual humiliation. You agree, your teeth clenched. You leave the peaceful chapel feeling spiritually bankrupt and no richer than when you entered. Finally, there is the last, most desperate option. The one you are not supposed to talk about. You send a trusted agent under the cover of darkness to the home of a Jewish moneylender named Aaron of York. The Jewish community exists in a precarious legal gray area. They are under your protection, which means you can tax them and seize their property at will. But they are also the only ones legally allowed to lend money at interest, making them the unofficial bankers to a perpetually indebted nobility. The meeting is not an audience, it is a transaction. There are no speeches, no appeals to loyalty. There are only numbers. The interest rates are astronomically high. The terms are brutal. You are pledging future customs revenues as collateral. You are mortgaging your kingdom's future to pay for today's war. You don't even see the gold yourself. Your agent brings back a signed note. The silver will be delivered discreetly to your treasury, but you feel the weight of it. The weight of the merchant's charters, the bishop's condescension, and the moneylender's crippling interest. Each coin that flows into your war chest is tainted with compromise and shame. You have the money now, or at least some of it. But in the process of gathering the funds to assert your authority, you have given most of it away. Weeks crawl by, each one a slow-motion eternity of anxious waiting. Finally, they begin to arrive. Not in a glorious disciplined flood, but in a muddy, disorganized trickle. Your army, or more accurately, a chaotic assembly of men who would mostly rather be anywhere else. They set up camp in the sprawling fields south of the castle, and with each passing day the green pasture transforms into a vast, stinking, muddy metropolis of misery. This is the reality of the feudal summons, a system that looks impressive on parchment and is an absolute shambles in person. You ride out to inspect your forces, trying to project an image of a confident warlord. The sight that greets you is less than inspiring. There is no uniformity. Each baron has brought his own household knights, each with their own colours, banners and squires. They look magnificent from a distance, a riot of colourful surcoats and gleaming helmets, but up close you see the bickering. They argue about whose tent gets the best spot, about who has precedence in the line of march, about ancient family insults that have absolutely nothing to do with the current crisis. They are a collection of peacocks, more interested in displaying their status than in forming a cohesive fighting force. Beyond the knights are the men-at-arms and sergeants, a motley crew of professional soldiers and lesser landowners. Their equipment is a mix of old and new. Some wear gleaming chainmail hauberks, while others are clad in rusty, ill-fitting pieces that look like they were passed down from a grandfather who fought at Hastings. Their helmets are dented, their shields are battered. They are the backbone of the army, seasoned and cynical, and they look at you with an impassive professionalism that is almost more unnerving than open hostility. They will fight for their pay, but not a moment longer. And then there is the infantry, the levies. Peasants and farmers, pulled from their fields by their feudal obligation. They are a sorry sight. Most have no armour at all, just their rough-spun tunics and perhaps a hardened leather cap. Their weapons are agricultural tools hastily repurposed for war, sharpened scythes, wood axes, long, clumsy spears. They are huddled together in small groups, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and resentment. They have been forced to leave their homes and families just before the harvest. Their eyes follow you as you ride past, and you see no loyalty in them, only a deep, sullen resignation. This is not the army of a beloved king. It is the armed posse of a deeply unpopular landlord. The camp itself is a sensory assault. The air is a thick soup of smells. Wood smoke from 1,000 cooking fires mingles with the stench of horse manure, the sour tang of unwashed bodies, and the ever-present gag-inducing odour of the latrine pits, long trenches dug at the edge of the camp that are already overflowing. The sounds are a constant deafening roar, the clang of blacksmiths' hammers repairing armour, the shouting of men in a dozen different regional accents, the nervous whinnying of thousands of horses, the drunken singing from a makeshift tavern that has sprung up overnight. It is a city built of canvas, mud, and bad decisions. You try to talk to the men. You stop to have a word with a prominent baron who uses the opportunity to complain about the quality of the ale. You compliment a knight on his horse, and he launches into a long, boring story about its lineage. You attempt a word of encouragement to a group of archers, and they just stare at you with blank, incomprehensible expressions. There is no sense of shared purpose, no patriotic fervor. There is only a vast armed and deeply inconvenient gathering of men who are costing you a fortune every single day they sit here. As you ride back to the relative sanity of your castle, a light rain begins to fall. It turns the dusty ground of the camp into a slick, greasy mud that sucks at your horse's hooves. The mood of the camp, already sour, seems to darken with the sky. You look back at the sprawling, chaotic sea of tents and sullen men. This is your great army. This is the instrument with which you intend to crush the rebellion and restore your authority. And as you watch them, a cold, hard knot of fear tightens in your gut. You have gathered a storm and you have a sinking feeling that you will not be able to control it. The order to march is given not with a heroic speech, but with the blaring, discordant sound of a dozen trumpets at dawn. It is a sound designed to wake the dead, but for the men in your reluctant army, it's just an unwelcome intrusion into a miserable, damp sleep. The camp, a sprawling city of mud and complaint, groans to life. Tents are struck with a flurry of curses. Cooking fires are doused with buckets of muddy water, and wagons are loaded with a clatter of barrels and boxes. The organized chaos of the morning is a symphony of inefficiency. Nothing is where it should be, and no one is in a hurry to do anything but complain. Your army does not move like a flowing river. It moves like a glacier of mud. It is a vast, sprawling creature, miles long, inching its way across the landscape at the pace of the slowest, most overburdened ox cart. You sit on your war horse, somewhere near the front, surrounded by your household knights in their finest, most impractical armor. From your vantage point, you can see the head of the column, a chaotic vanguard of outriders. But when you look back, the line of men and wagons disappears over the horizon, a serpent of discontent slithering through the English countryside. The road, such as it is, quickly ceases to exist. Under the weight of thousands of men, horses, and iron-rimmed wheels, the damp autumn track dissolves into a primal swamp of mud. It is the true enemy of this campaign. The mud is a greedy, sucking monster. It grabs at the hooves of horses. It pulls men's boots from their feet, and it swallows wagon wheels up to their axles. The air is filled with the wet, sloppy sound of 1,000 feet slogging through the mire, a constant demoralizing schlorp, schlorp, schlorp that becomes the rhythm of your day. It is the soundtrack to your slow, expensive failure. You can smell the army on the move. It is a unique and profoundly unpleasant perfume. The base note is the earthy, sour smell of the churned-up mud itself. Layered on top of that is the sharp, ammoniac scent of horse urine and manure from the thousands of animals in the column. Add to that the smell of 10,000 unwashed men, a thick human musk of stale sweat and damp wool. Then, a final top note of wood smoke that clings to every fiber of your being. You breathe this in all day, every day. It is the air of your kingdom at war. As the king, you are spared the worst of it, but only just. You ride a horse, you do not walk, but the saddle still chafes, and the cold rain that begins to fall in the afternoon still finds its way down the collar of your cloak. Your food is carried in a dedicated wagon, but the bread is still stale and the salted meat is still a jaw-breaking exercise in endurance. At night, your tent is larger than the others, with a brazier for warmth and a cot to sleep on. But the ground beneath is still damp, the air is still cold, and the sounds of the miserable camp, the coughing, the arguments, the crying of a homesick peasant boy, still filter through the canvas walls. The days blur into a miserable, monotonous cycle. Wake at dawn, force down a breakfast of cold bacon and weaker ale, ride for hours at a walking pace, staring at the back of the night in front of you. Stop at midday to eat a piece of hard cheese while standing in a muddy field. Ride again until dusk. Make camp. Listen to your barons complain. Try to sleep. Repeat. This is the glorious life of a king on campaign. It is an endless commute through a landscape of discomfort, a road trip where the only destination is a place you don't want to be. You pass through villages, small huddled collections of wattle and daub huts. The peasants come out to stare. They do not cheer. They hide their animals and watch with sullen, fearful eyes as your vast, hungry army passes by. Your foragers, the men tasked with sourcing supplies from the local area, are already at work. You know that sourcing is just a polite word for theft. You are marching through your own kingdom, and your army is devouring it like a plague of locusts, leaving a trail of resentment and empty granaries in its wake. One afternoon, your own baggage wagon, the one carrying your personal wardrobe and the last of the decent wine, gets stuck in a particularly deep patch of mud. The axle snaps with a crack like a gunshot. The wagon lurches, spilling a large chest into the mire. It breaks open and your fine silk tunics and fur-lined cloaks tumble out into the viscous brown sludge. Your men stare, first in shock, then with a barely concealed amusement. You, the King of England, watch as your royal finery is ruined by the same indifferent mud that has been tormenting them for weeks. In that moment, surrounded by the ruin of your clothes and the quiet mockery of your army, you have never felt less like a king. After what feels like a lifetime of slogging through the mud, you arrive. De Vesci's castle, Alnwick, looms on the horizon. It is a formidable sight, a grey stone beast squatting on a hill, its walls and towers looking solid, ancient, and utterly indifferent to your presence. There are no trumpets of defiance from the battlements, no shouted taunts. There is only a chilling, arrogant silence. The rebel banners, limp in the damp air, are the only sign that anyone is home. The castle seems to be watching you, judging you, and finding you wanting. Your army does not charge, it collapses. The men throw down their packs with groans of relief. The knights dismount, their legs stiff and aching. The great, disorganized beast of your army spills out across the fields before the castle, and the tedious process of making camp begins all over again. But this is different. This is not a one-night stop. This camp will be a semi-permanent city, and it is built on a foundation of exhaustion and low morale. The latrine trenches are dug deeper this time, a grim acknowledgement that you are in this for the long haul. The first days of the siege are not a storm of arrows and clashing steel. They are a festival of manual labor. Under the direction of your master engineer, a grumpy Fleming named Gerard who speaks very little English and communicates mostly through irritated gestures, your peasant levies are put to work. They are no longer soldiers. They are a construction crew. They dig. They dig vast trenches to surround the castle, siege lines to protect your own camp from a sudden sortie. The work is back-breaking, the shovels are clumsy, and the ground is cold and hard. The only sound for days is the rhythmic scrape and thud of digging, a monotonous percussion of misery. You hold a council of war in your command tent. The mood is grim. Gerard the Fleming, using a translator, explains the situation in blunt, technical terms. The castle walls are thick. The position is strong. A direct assault would be suicide. He recommends building siege engines. A trebuchet, he suggests. A massive catapult capable of hurling huge stones to batter the walls. He unrolls a parchment with a complex diagram of the proposed machine. It looks like a nightmare of ropes, beams, and counterweights. It will take weeks to build. weeks of felling timber, shaping it, and assembling the giant, complicated weapon. While the engineers get to work, the rest of the army waits, and waiting is its own special kind of torture. Boredom is a disease that spreads through the camp faster than any plague. The knights, with nothing to do, gamble, drink, and quarrel amongst themselves. The men-at-arms sit around campfires, sharpening their swords for the 10th time, telling the same stale jokes. The peasant levies, their digging done for the moment, huddle in their tents, staring into the middle distance, their thoughts on the crops that are rotting in their fields back home. The camp is a vast, stagnant pond of armed and dangerous ennui. And then the other enemy arrives, the one you can't see. Disease. The camp is a perfect breeding ground for it. 10,000 men living in close quarters, with sanitation that is medieval in the worst sense of the word. The stream you are using for drinking water is located downstream from where the horses are watered and the men wash their clothes. The flux, a brutal form of dysentery, begins to spread. At first it's just a few men, then dozens. Soon, hundreds are incapacitated, writhing in their tents, too weak to stand. Your army is being defeated not by the rebels but by its own filth. You tour the camp trying to maintain the fiction that you are in command. The stench from the hospital tent, a place of groans and quiet death, is unbearable. You see the faces of your soldiers, and they are not the faces of a confident, conquering army. They are pale, gaunt, and sullen. They look at the silent, imposing castle, and they look at the squalor of their own camp, and you can see the question in their eyes. Why are we here? You have brought them all this way at enormous expense to sit in a muddy field, starve, get sick, and wait for a giant wooden spoon to be built. It is not a siege. It is a slow, expensive, and deeply embarrassing public health crisis. The siege has dragged on for over a month. The landscape around the castle has been stripped bare. Every tree for miles has been felled for firewood or for the monstrous trebuchet, which is now a half-finished wooden skeleton, a monument to slow progress. The autumn rains have given way to the first biting winds of winter. A permanent, greasy layer of mud coats everything. The number of men who have died from the flux now outnumbers the men who have died in the few minor skirmishes with rebel patrols. Morale is not just low. It has burrowed deep into the frozen earth and is contemplating staying there until spring. One night, the sky puts on a show. A comet appears, a pale, ghostly smear against the ink-black heavens, its long tail like a finger pointing directly at the rebel castle. In an age without science, in a camp filled with superstitious and frightened men, this is not an astronomical event. It is a message. The news spreads through the tents in hushed, fearful whispers. It is an omen. But what does it mean? Your court astrologer, a shifty man who is much better at flattery than prediction, claims it is a sign of your impending, glorious victory. The camp priest, however, delivers a sermon suggesting it is a sign of God's wrath, a heavenly rebuke for this unholy war of brother against brother. The whispers in the camp tell a different story. The soldiers, cold and sick and miserable, see the celestial sign for what it obviously is, a cosmic declaration that this whole enterprise is cursed. They see the silent, defiant castle and the accusing finger of the comet, and they put two and two together. The rebels must have God on their side. The feeling spreads, an invisible poison, sapping what little will to fight remains. Your barons come to you, their faces long. They speak of the approach of winter, the difficulty of supply, the grumbling of their men. They don't mention the comet, but it hangs in the air between you, a silent, shimmering accusation. You feel the pressure building to a point that is physically painful. Every day you sit here, you are burning through the last of the silver you begged and borrowed. Every day, more of your men sicken and die. Every day, your authority erodes a little more. The rebellion you were supposed to crush in a swift, decisive campaign has instead become a black hole, sucking in your resources, your reputation, and the lives of your subjects. You have to do something. Anything. The waiting has become more terrifying than the prospect of action. And that is when the terrible idea is born. It comes to you in the dead of night, in your cold tent, as you stare at the half-finished skeleton of the trebuchet. It is an idea born not of strategy, but of sheer, unadulterated desperation. The walls are strong, the gates are barred, the trebuchet is weeks from being finished. But the garrison inside the castle cannot be that large. You have a massive numerical advantage. You will not wait for the machine. You will not wait for the walls to be breached. You will take the castle by storm. A direct, frontal assault. You summon your war council the next morning. You can see the exhaustion and despair on their faces. You lay out your plan. You will build siege ladders and a great wheeled tower. At dawn, under the cover of a massive volley from your archers, your best men will storm the walls. It will be a surprise. It will be glorious. It will be decisive. You deliver this with as much passion and confidence as you can muster, trying to ignite a fire in these cold, tired men. A heavy silence greets your proposal. William Marshall, his face a roadmap of old battle scars, is the first to speak. He doesn't raise his voice. He speaks with a quiet, deadly seriousness. Your Majesty, that is not a plan. That is a massacre. The walls are too high. The ditches are too wide. They will slaughter us on the ladders. He points out that you have no breach in the wall, that the attackers will be a perfect, helpless target for the defenders above. The Bishop of Winchester murmurs his agreement, speaking of the terrible sin of needlessly throwing away the lives of Christian men. They are right. You know they are right. It is a foolish, reckless, and suicidal plan. But their caution, their logic, their infuriating correctness, it feels like a personal criticism. It feels like they are calling you a failure. And your pride, that fragile, wounded thing that has caused so much of this trouble, cannot bear it. A hot flush of anger rises in you, overriding reason. You question my courage? You snap, your voice sharp. I see an army of lions led by me. We will attack at dawn in 2 days. That is my final command. You stare them down, daring them to object again. They do not. They simply lower their eyes. Their silence a more profound condemnation than any argument. You have just sentenced hundreds, maybe thousands of your own men to death, all to soothe your own bruised ego. The order is given. The terrible idea is now an unstoppable reality. The 2 days you have decreed pass not like time, but like a sentence being served. An atmosphere of grim, methodical preparation settles over the camp, a stark contrast to the sullen boredom that preceded it. The change is not for the better. There is no newfound enthusiasm, no surge of martial spirit. There is only the quiet, focused energy of men preparing for a task they know to be both deadly and pointless. The air, already thick with the smells of mud and sickness, now acquires the sharp metallic tang of honed steel and the oily scent of boiled leather. It is the smell of a collective, resigned march toward the inevitable. The most pervasive sound in the camp is the whisper of whetstones. From every tent, every campfire comes the steady, rhythmic shing, shing, shing of stone against steel. Men sit for hours, drawing their blades across the stones, not with the fierce energy of a warrior preparing for glory, but with the slow, meticulous patience of a butcher sharpening his tools before a long day's work. They test the edges with their thumbs, their faces impassive in the firelight. This is not about victory. This is about making the end, when it comes, as quick as possible for whoever is unlucky enough to meet their blade. It is a sound that gets under your skin, 1,000 tiny whispers of impending death. You walk through the camp as dusk falls, a heavy cloak pulled around you, your bodyguard a few paces behind. You are trying to project an image of the resolute commander, the king who shares the eve of battle with his men. But it is a lie, and everyone knows it. The soldiers avert their gazes as you pass. They fall silent, or their conversations drop to a low, unintelligible murmur until you are out of earshot. You are not their leader. You are their executioner. You see priests moving through the gloom, their dark robes blending with the shadows, their voices a low drone as they hear confessions and offer absolution. They are doing a brisk business tonight. The physical tools of your terrible idea now stand ready. The siege ladders, hastily constructed from the green wood of the surrounding forest, are laid out on the ground. There are dozens of them. They are massive, clumsy things, heavy and unwieldy. They look less like instruments of war and more like crude agricultural implements, designed for a harvest of men. Near them sits the siege tower, a monstrous wooden beast on wheels, its construction rushed and incomplete. It leans slightly to one side, a testament to the hurried, desperate nature of your plan. It is a monument to your impatience, and you know with a sickening certainty that it will never reach the walls. You see your barons standing with their own knights. They are giving their final instructions, their voices low and serious. You see William Marshall, his back to you, speaking to a group of his men. He is not shouting, not delivering a rousing speech. He is pointing at a diagram he has drawn in the mud, a map of the castle walls, showing them the weakest points, the places where they might, with a miracle's worth of luck, gain a foothold. He is a professional, doing his duty, preparing his men for the slaughter you have ordered. His competence is a silent, searing rebuke of your own reckless pride. You retreat to the solitude of your command tent. A servant brings you your meal, roast chicken and wine. The chicken is greasy and cold. The wine is sour. You chew the food without tasting it, your stomach a tight, cold knot of dread. The silence in your tent is a vacuum, amplifying every sound from outside. The whisper of the whetstones, the nervous cough of a sentry, the distant, mournful whinny of a horse. You are the most powerful man for 100 miles in any direction, and you have never felt so utterly, terrifyingly alone. The silence is broken only by the scratching of your own thoughts. Is it too late? The question circles in your mind like a vulture. You could still call it off. You could swallow your pride, admit the old knight was right, and endure the quiet contempt of your counsel. You could save these men. The thought is a brief, tantalizing flicker of reason in the storm of your ego. You picture yourself sending the order. You imagine the wave of relief that would wash over the camp. You would be a fool, perhaps, but a living fool, leading a living army. The path of sense, of caution, of survival is right there, just one decision away. But then you picture their faces. You see the smug, knowing look on Marshall's face. You hear the whispers in the court. The king lost his nerve. John Lackland, the king who was afraid to fight. The imagined shame is a physical pain, more acute than the real fear you feel now. Your pride, that brittle, toxic shield, rises to defend you from the specter of humiliation. No, the order has been given. To rescind it now would be the act of a weakling, a coward. You will see this through. You will prove them all wrong. You cling to the hope of a miraculous victory, the one chance in 1,000 that this suicidal gamble might pay off. It is the only thing you have left. Sleep is a foreign country to which you have no visa. You lie on your cot, your eyes wide open, staring at the canvas roof of your tent. The shadows from the single candle dance and writhe, forming monstrous shapes in the gloom. You listen to the sounds of your army settling into a restless, fearful sleep. You are the author of all their nightmares, and yet you are the one who cannot find a moment's peace. The hours before dawn are the coldest and the darkest. You lie there, a king in a cold tent, waiting for the sun to rise, waiting to watch your own army die. Dawn does not break, it leaks. A slow grey seepage of light bleeds into the eastern sky, revealing a world leached of all colour. The landscape is a miserable watercolour of grey mud, black trees, and the stony, implacable grey of the castle walls. The air is frigid, with a dampness that feels like it's actively trying to find its way into your bones. A low-lying mist clings to the ground, shrouding the feet of the men as they assemble, making them look like an army of ghosts summoned from the earth. There are no trumpets, no heroic calls to arms. There is only a grim, shuffling silence. You are already on your horse, positioned on a small rise a safe distance from the castle walls, surrounded by your most loyal household knights. Your vantage point is perfect. You can see everything. The field of mud before the walls, the lines of your soldiers, dark masses of men waiting in the gloom, the castle itself, which at this hour looks less like a fortress and more like a natural, malevolent feature of the landscape. Your horse shifts under you, its warm breath pluming in the icy air. It can sense the tension, the collective fear that hangs over the field like the mist. You grip the leather reins, your knuckles white, your hands slick with a cold sweat. The preparations are almost silent, which is more unnerving than any noise. You watch as the first teams of men, designated ladder-bearers, hoist the huge, clumsy ladders onto their shoulders. They stagger under the weight, their feet slipping in the greasy mud. Other groups begin to push the pathetic, leaning siege tower forward, its wheels sinking immediately into the soft ground. It moves at the speed of a dying snail, its wooden frame groaning in protest. There is no energy, no dash. It is the grim, plodding work of men who have already accepted their fate. A priest walks along the front line holding a crucifix aloft, his voice a low chanting drone that is swallowed by the vast, cold silence. You see men making the sign of the cross. You see them checking the straps on their helmets, tightening their belts, taking one last swig of water from their flasks. Every small mundane action is freighted with a terrible finality. These are the last things they will do. You watch them, these anonymous figures in the grey light, and you feel a profound, chilling detachment. You set this in motion, but now you are merely a spectator. They are no longer your men. They are fuel for the fire of your pride. The signal is given, not a trumpet blast, but a single raised banner, and the attack begins. It is not a charge. A charge is impossible in this mud. It is a slow, agonizing walk. The men lean forward, their heads bowed, as if walking into a strong wind. The only sound is the squelch and suck of 1,000 boots pulling free from the mire. It is the ugliest, most pathetic advance you have ever witnessed. From the castle walls, there is still only silence. The rebels are waiting. They are watching this slow-motion disaster unfold, and they are letting you come. The archers positioned on the flanks draw their bows. The order is shouted, and the first volley is loosed. 1,000 arrows arc into the sky, a dark cloud that seems to hang in the air for a moment before descending on the castle battlements. It is a beautiful, terrible sight, but it is like throwing pebbles against a mountain. The arrows clatter harmlessly against the stone merlons or thud into the thick wooden shutters covering the arrow slits. A few figures on the wall duck back, but that is all. Your opening move, your great show of force, has been utterly useless. Now the castle answers. Not with arrows, but with a single deep, resonant boom. The sound hits you in the chest. It is a war horn, a sound of profound and ancient menace. And as its note echoes across the field, the battlements of Alnwick Castle suddenly swarm with men. Banners unfurl. The sun, finally breaking through the mist, glints off hundreds of helmeted heads. They have been there all along, hidden behind the stone, watching, waiting for your men to reach the perfect killing ground, the open, muddy field directly beneath their walls. The silence is over. The trap is sprung. You have walked your army directly into it. What happens next is not a battle. A battle implies a contest, a struggle between two sides. This is an execution. The moment the rebel war horn sounds, the air is filled with a sound you have never heard before. The simultaneous metallic thrum of 100 crossbows firing at once. It's a low, vicious hum, like a giant, angry insect. It is immediately followed by a sound like tearing fabric, the hiss of 1,000 arrows and crossbow bolts slicing through the damp air. And then the screaming starts. It is not the defiant roar of a battle cry. It is a chorus of sharp, surprised yelps of pain, cut short by wet, gurgling sounds as men fall face first into the mud. From your hill, you have a god's-eye view of the slaughter. You see your men, bogged down and helpless in the open field, turned into a human pincushion. The first line of soldiers simply ceases to exist, crumpling into the mire as the volley hits them. They don't fall heroically, they just collapse, their slow, agonizing advance brought to a sudden, undignified end. The men behind them hesitate, their momentum broken, and in that moment of hesitation, a second volley hits them. It is a machine of death, operated with a cold, terrifying efficiency. The rebels aren't even bothering with individual targets. They are just pouring death into the packed ranks of your soldiers. The men with the ladders are the most exposed. They are trying to run now, a clumsy, stumbling jog through the sucking mud, the heavy ladders bouncing on their shoulders. They are perfect targets. You watch one team of 6 men. 5 of them are hit in the space of a few seconds. They fall, and the ladder crashes down, pinning one of the wounded men beneath its weight. He struggles for a moment, his screams muffled by the mud, and then he is still. The entire assault has stalled not even 50 yards from where it started. Your grand plan has disintegrated into a panicked, muddy traffic jam in a killing field. A few groups, driven by a courage born of pure terror, actually make it to the base of the walls. You watch with a kind of detached horror as one crew, miraculously unscathed, manages to rear their ladder up against the stone. It scrapes against the wall, and for a single insane moment you feel a flicker of hope. A knight in a bright blue surcoat is the first to start climbing. He is fast. He is brave. He is also an idiot. Before he is halfway up, a huge rock, probably pried from the battlements themselves, is dropped from above. It doesn't just hit him, it obliterates him. The knight and the top half of the ladder are smashed backward, and the men below are crushed in an avalanche of wood, stone, and broken bodies. Meanwhile, your great siege tower, your centerpiece, has become a pathetic joke. It is hopelessly, immovably stuck in the mud, leaning at an even more precarious angle. It is now nothing more than a giant stationary target. The rebels seem to find this particularly amusing. They begin to focus their attention on it. First come the arrows, thudding into its wooden hide until it looks like a giant porcupine. Then come the fire arrows. At first, the damp wood resists, but one arrow finds a purchase in a bundle of dry straw packed for padding, and a wisp of smoke appears. The wisp becomes a plume, and then, with a hungry whoosh, one entire side of the tower erupts in flames. The men trapped inside begin to scream, a high, thin sound of pure agony that is audible even from your position on the hill. The tower becomes a chimney, a monument to your folly, burning your soldiers alive. You sit on your horse, frozen. Your jaw is clenched so tight your teeth ache. This isn't happening. It cannot be happening. This was supposed to be your victory, your moment of redemption. Instead, you are presiding over a methodical, almost industrial process of annihilation. The sounds wash over you. The thrum of crossbows, the hiss of arrows, the splintering of wood, the wet thud of bodies and the screams. Oh God, the screams. They are a constant ragged tapestry of pain, a sound that you know will follow you for the rest of your life. You want to shout, to give an order, to sound the retreat. But the words are stuck in your throat. To give the order to retreat is to admit that this was all for nothing, to admit that you were wrong, and so you do nothing. You just watch. The decision is eventually made for you, not by a commander but by the collective primal instinct of the men on the field. The assault doesn't retreat, it dissolves. It breaks apart like a sandcastle in the tide. First one man, then a dozen, then a whole company throws down his shield and turns to flee. The flight is even more pathetic than the advance. They slip and fall in the blood-slicked mud, crawling on their hands and knees, scrambling over the bodies of their fallen comrades. It is a rout, a panicked, every man for himself scramble for the safety of the siege lines. The rebels on the walls let out a great roaring cheer, a sound of pure, contemptuous victory, and send one last, mocking volley of arrows into the backs of the fleeing men. The field is empty. The silence that returns is more profound and damning than the noise it replaced. The mist is burning off now, and the morning sun illuminates the full horror of the scene. The mud is littered with bodies, dark, still shapes in the morning light. The pathetic, broken ladders lie at the base of the walls, and in the center of it all the siege tower burns, a great, blackening skeleton belching thick, greasy smoke into the clean winter sky. The castle stands untouched, its rebel banners fluttering in the breeze. You are left alone on your hill, surrounded by your stunned knights, surveying the perfect, undeniable, and entirely self-inflicted wreckage of your army and your authority. The retreat from Alnwick is not a march, it is a funeral procession. There is no order, no discipline. What remains of your army simply packs its belongings and begins the long, shameful slog south. You do not give the order to retreat. You don't have to. The army has made the decision for you. It is a force held together now only by a shared desire to be somewhere else. The barons avoid your gaze. The knights murmur amongst themselves, their voices low and mutinous. The surviving peasant levies just stare ahead with the hollow, empty eyes of men who have seen the abyss and have no words for it. The journey back is a mirror image of the journey north, but stripped of all its pretense and hope. The mud is still there, but now it feels less like an obstacle and more like a punishment, a physical manifestation of your disgrace. The rain is colder, the wind is sharper. Every league you travel away from that cursed castle is a league deeper into your own personal failure. The army leaves its dead behind unburied for the crows and the wolves. It also leaves behind its honor, its purpose, and any lingering respect it might have had for its king. You ride in a bubble of silence. No one approaches you. No one speaks to you unless absolutely necessary. You are a leper, a pariah, the sole architect of this catastrophe. You spend the long hours in the saddle replaying the assault in your mind. You see the ladders fall. You see the tower burn. You hear the screams. You try to find a reason, an excuse, someone else to blame. Was it the fault of the engineers, the cowardice of the men, the treachery of a baron? But your mind offers no such comfort. Every path of logic, every honest thought leads back to one place, your tent, your pride, your terrible, terrible idea. That night, you make camp miles from the castle, but it is not far enough away to escape the ghosts. You sit in your tent, a larger, more luxurious tent than any of your soldiers, and the privilege of it feels like a mockery. You cannot eat, you cannot drink, you can only sit and listen to the sounds of your broken army. There is no drunken laughter tonight, no boisterous arguments. There is only a low, exhausted murmur, the sound of coughing from the sick tents, and the quiet weeping of a man who has lost his brother or his friend. The sounds are an accusation. Hubert de Burgh, your justiciar, enters your tent without being summoned. His face is a mask of exhaustion. He does not offer comfort or platitudes. He is a practical man, and he brings practical problems. "Your Majesty," he begins, his voice flat and devoid of emotion, "Lord Fitzalan's men are deserting. They are slipping away in the night in groups of 5 and 10. He claims he cannot hold them. This is the news you have been dreading. The fragile glue of feudal obligation has dissolved completely. The army is disintegrating. You look at him, searching for a solution, a plan, a single shred of hope. He offers none. There is more," he continues. "A scout has reported that the northern barons, the ones who did not join the rebellion, are mustering their own forces. They are not marching to join us. They are marching to meet at York." The implication is clear. The neutral parties, the ones who were waiting to see who would win, have seen your catastrophic failure. They are not flocking to your banner. They are gathering to form a third power, a bloc of nobles united by their opposition to a king who is now proven to be not just a tyrant, but an incompetent one. This is the end. You know it with a certainty that is colder and harder than the frozen ground beneath your feet. You have not just lost a battle, you have lost the kingdom. Your attempt to crush a small rebellion has instead fanned the embers of discontent into a raging inferno. You have united your enemies, alienated your friends, and proven to the entire world that you are unfit to rule. The weight of this realization is a physical thing, pressing down on you, crushing the air from your lungs. You dismiss Hubert with a wave of your hand. You are alone again in the candlelight. You think of your father, Henry II, a giant of a man, a ruler who forged an empire through sheer force of will. You think of your brother, Richard the Lionheart, a legend whose heroic reputation has haunted your every step. And then you think of yourself, John, the youngest son, the one who was never supposed to be king, the one who was given the nickname Lackland because your father had no territory left to give you. It was a joke then. It is a prophecy now. You have taken the vast inheritance of your family, the most powerful throne in Europe, and you have squandered it in a muddy field in the north of England. You lay down on your cot, but you do not close your eyes. You stare into the darkness. There is no anger left, no pride. There is only a vast, hollow emptiness. The political chaos you feared, the chaos you helped create, is no longer a distant threat. It is here. It is your new reality. You are no longer just a failing king. You are the father of a civil war. The night is long, the longest of your life, and for the first time, you do not fear the assassins or the rebels or the judgment of your barons. You fear the coming of the dawn because you have no idea what you will do when the light returns. And so you lie there in the cold and the dark, the most powerful man in the kingdom, and also the most broken. The story of King John, of course, doesn't end here. This disaster would directly lead to more rebellion, to the Magna Carta, to a French invasion, and to his own ignominious death from dysentery a few years later. He would go down in history as one of England's worst kings, a caricature of royal failure. But for a moment, just leave him there, trapped in his cold tent and his even colder failure. And think about where you are. You are lying in a bed that is probably not stuffed with straw. The air you're breathing is likely free of wood smoke and the stench of a diseased army camp. The silence around you is not filled with the screams of the dying or the mutinous whispers of your subjects. Your greatest political crisis of the day probably involves an annoying email or a frustrating post on social media. Think of the sheer, blissful, mundane comfort of your world, the softness of your pillow, the miracle of clean water. The fact that your home is not currently surrounded by thousands of resentful, heavily armed men. We look back at these figures, these kings and queens, and we see power and glory. But we forget the discomfort, the dirt, the disease, the constant grinding physical and political misery of it all. We forget that the crown was not just heavy with gold, but with the weight of bad food, bad sanitation, and even worse ideas. So as you drift off, feel a little gratitude for the sheer boredom of your own comfortable modern life. It is a luxury that King John, for all his power, could never have imagined. Good night, tired listener, and until next time.